Coming up on this episode of Crime Family.
This is the fourth and final part of our Meredith Kercher murder case deep dive. I think definitely one of the major factors in this case was the part that the media played in all of it and how they really played into the police's narrative of Amanda's behavior.
It's like she's pretending to fire this machine gun. She has a big smile on her face. And they took that as if, oh my god, see, Amanda Knox is unhinged.
Crazy, angsty woman who was obsessed with sex, and she was involved in Meredith's killing after the crazy sex game went wrong. So it really kind of played into that whole narrative that the media and the police were trying to paint.
It's crazy that they got that far, like that deep into it, and that they got away with it for so long.
And all they have to do is remove the context or remove any like background information, and they can just like spin whatever story they want. And it worked. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Crime Family. I'm your co-host, AJ, and I'm here with my two sisters, Stephanie and Katie. And this is the fourth and final part of our Meredith Kercher murder case deep dive coverage. So if you haven't listened to the first three parts, stop listening now and go take a listen. We've kind of reviewed the case from beginning to end, including all of the legal proceedings. In this part, we're going to kind of really delve deep into the media's impact on this case, because we haven't really touched too much on that in the previous three parts. We've talked about it a little bit, but not really in any sort of detail. So we're going to kind of do that in this episode, is talk about the media's impact and also just a couple of more examples of how the police really, manipulated everyone, including the media, and how it kind of erupted into this crazy case that we spent 3 episodes reviewing. And yeah, we're also going to go a little bit into the aftermath of the trial and kind of catch you up on where everyone is now, all the major players in this case. So without further ado, I will get into it. So I think definitely one of the major factors in this case was the part that the media played in all of it and how they really played into the police's narrative of Amanda's behavior and how they tried to paint her as the villain in order to bolster the case against her. And I'm going to kind of start off by just giving this example, like one of the most egregious things I think that they did, in my opinion, in this whole case, which we didn't go over in like the timeline of the case. So I'm going to talk about it now. And I think it was early on in the investigation. So I think it was probably while she was in jail. Because remember, she was in jail for 8 months initially before she was even charged with the murder. So this happened, I think, while she was still being held in jail before the official charges came against her. But basically what happened was that Amanda was taken to the medical clinic at the jail that she was at, and they did some tests on her, and she was told that she had tested positive for HIV. And she was accompanied to the jail's medical clinic, and she was told this news there. And they kind of explained to her that because of this diagnosis, as a precaution, she should inform them of every sexual partner she's ever had in her whole life so that those people could be given notice and informed. I think that's proper protocol. Like when you get, an HIV positive diagnosis, you are supposed to inform any sexual partners that you've had so that they can get tested and all that sort of thing. So that was like a normal procedure. So she describes, and she explains this in her interview with Megyn Kelly that I've referenced in past episodes, but she kind of describes how she was given this news, and of course it's like shaken her. She thinks she's just been given a death sentence, more or less, or some severe medical news that obviously she didn't expect to hear. So she goes back to her cell and she begins writing down the names in her journal of every sexual partner she's ever had throughout the course of her life. And then she recalls shortly after this, the police raid her cell. So they steal everything that she had, all of her documents, including this list of her sexual partners or supposed sexual partners. So that gets taken along with everything else that she had ever written. And she did a lot of journaling, I think. So they just took everything. And very shortly after this list that she had written was released to the media. And this was used against her in order to feed into the narrative that Amanda was this, crazy, angsty woman who was obsessed with sex, and she was involved in Meredith's killing after the crazy sex game went wrong. So it really kind of played into that whole narrative that the media and the police were trying to paint. And eventually Amanda was informed that she did not have HIV. So I think this was just a blatant lie. I don't even think it was like a false positive or that they had even, seen a positive test result. I think it was all just a manipulation. She was eventually told that she didn't have HIV. And so it's just kind of disgusting to me that the police and the media would do that to her. And this is just one example of the way that Amanda was treated and how the police really used the media in this major way to turn the public against her.
What do they gain from that? Like, lying to her like that? Like, that is so uncalled for one. And to tell somebody that they have HIV is definitely not appropriate. Like, I don't understand why that's the lie they decided to go with.
Yeah, and I think it was just like a manipulative play because I think they realized early on they're going to go with her as this crazy sex addict woman. And that was the story they wanted to go with, and they needed something to kind of back that up. So I think it was very, very planned. And the only way that she's going to like provide that information to them is if she's given this news and you're told to do this as part of the procedure. Like, I think that's kind of the scheme that they came up with in their mind. Allegedly, of course, I don't really know. Obviously, I wasn't in the room. I wasn't in these conversations, but you can just kind of assume it's like, okay, if they realize this is what we need to go with, how can we bolster this image of her? And that's what they chose to do.
I don't know if this came after they had done this HIV tactic because they were just clearly trying to get something out of her. But one of the guards or one of the people that were higher up in the prison was told by the police to kind of ask her sexual questions and try and like act like you're flirting with her kind of thing. Like, she didn't know that at the beginning, but she was like scared this guard was going to do something. And so I think the police were trying to get her to talk to him about those kinds of things. And then he would go back to them and be like, yeah, they talk to me about sex all the time. So it was like this whole thing where they were just trying to get this out of her. So maybe if that didn't work, then that's when this whole HIV thing came in. So they're like, let's get a list of all the people she's ever been with.
Yeah. This is like deeply personal information that they're leaking. I mean, I don't think they leaked the manipulative tactic that they used to get that information. Like, I don't think, they probably didn't say, well, it's because she was just given an HIV diagnosis. Like, I think obviously they kept that part pretty hush-hush.
Oh yeah, no, they definitely didn't say that.
No, they probably just kind of painted it as like, oh, she's bragging about it in jail. Like, these are the conversations she's having while she's in jail. I think also too, because of the fact that like it's HIV, which is like, I mean, I guess they didn't reveal that part. So I guess that was, I mean, at the very least, they didn't say that to the media and like they were doing that, which I mean, I guess they could have easily have done that too. If they really wanted to, they could have leaked like, oh, she has HIV, like, which would have like made it even more stigmatizing for her. So, I mean, I guess they didn't do that at the very least, but still, like the way that they kind of manipulated her in that way also kind of sucks because it's like she should have known after the interrogation, like, don't trust anyone who comes to your cell. Like, the police literally just are trying to frame you and made you falsely confess. Like, you shouldn't be giving information, but I guess you're not going to think that they're going to like give you a false diagnosis of something. And then like, it just kind of, you're never going to be thinking that, I guess. But I feel like it would be very hard to trust anything that the police or anyone of authority did after that confession debacle. But
well, yeah, especially in the beginning, because I mean, I've seen multiple times that they say that like Amanda was super naive and she did believe everything that she was being told in the beginning. And, she just didn't have that sense of the world that people were actually malicious like that, especially authority figures. So yeah, she's definitely naive and super easy to manipulate early on.
Yeah. And they definitely used that to their advantage any way they could. So it just kind of goes to show you that one particular example of how dirty they played. They didn't really care who it was going to impact. They didn't care. And also too, like, that's not, you're not only impacting Amanda, obviously she's the most, but you're also impacting all those people. So like if their names are released to the media that like, oh, you had sex with Amanda Knox. And at this point, Amanda Knox was seen as this like villain everywhere. And then that's going to impact their own life. Be like, oh, you were like hooked up with Amanda Knox. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's just like a ripple effect, right? That's like gonna, not just Amanda is impacted by that. It's like all these other people too. So it's just like, they have no regard for any of those people. They don't really care, clearly. And yeah, so I also think the part of that that's really annoying too, or that's crazy, is like the media really got manipulated in all of it too, because they were just taking all this information that the law enforcement in Italy was telling them, and they were kind of running with it as well. I don't think they did too much internal investigations, or they didn't check the sources or something, because they were really played. And they played right into the hand of the lawyers and the police force in Italy. Like, you know, they were an easy target as well, because I think they knew, like, we can just, you know, leak all this information and paint this sort of narrative, and we know that the media is going to eat it up. So that's also really sad too.
Yeah, and maybe because the source was coming from law enforcement, that it really wasn't slander or defamation against Amanda, because it was coming from a legit source. So that's why like the media is not at fault, because like my first thought would be like sue the media, but maybe you can't because of where they were getting their quote unquote information from.
Yeah, I feel like you probably would have to sue like the source of the information. So like if the media was given that information, I don't know if they can be sued. It's more like if like a tabloid like makes it up out of nowhere, then I think maybe. But like if they're given that info by like a legitimate, like the police.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's probably the loophole there.
Yeah, but I mean, at the very least, the police should be sued, but not just because of that, but it's based on everything that we've gone over so far. And one of the big, like, if you know this case, or if you followed in any depth about this case as it was happening, one of the monikers that Amanda was given by the international media was Foxy Knoxy. And this, again, was meant as a term that related to Amanda's supposed promiscuous ways, just like everything else that they were doing. And in reality, Amanda explains, like, the nickname was one that she actually had way before this whole case even happened. Like, she was given that nickname because of her amazing ability as a soccer player. She was, quote, quick like a fox, end quote, on the field. And so she was given that nickname by her teammates. But this term was latched onto as a way to paint this picture of Amanda that the media and the police wanted. So funny that they leave that piece of it out. Like, they don't give that context that, like, she actually had this nickname for many years. And they didn't explain the real meaning of the nickname or where it came from, but they just said Foxy Knoxy. And that was, if you look at any tabloid reports or whatever from that time, or any sort of media coverage, like, you're probably going to see the term Foxy Knoxy come up. So that just kind of says it all right there in that little 2-word phrase.
Yeah, so they really like clung on to anything that they could. And there's like another thing that you see in the media of Amanda is visiting this museum with her family, and there's like this old machine gun thing that's there, and there's a picture of her, like, it's like she's pretending to fire this machine gun. She has a big smile on her face, and they took that as if, oh my god, see, Amanda Knox is unhinged.
Oh, ridiculous.
Just because of this picture that she had at the museum. Like, it's like, oh my god, like, leave her alone. You go through anyone's picture album maybe and pick out anything and be like, let's spin this, right? Like, so it's crazy that they got that far, like, that deep into it, and that they got away with it for so long.
Yeah.
Oh, look at so-and-so has a water gun. They look suspicious. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's the stupidest thing ever. Anybody can go to a museum and smile.
Yeah, really. Like, so-and-so shot their neighbor with a gun. It was like, it's actually like a little water pistol. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Neighbor comes forward and says that they were targeted and shot at. Like, really, they were like 8 years old at a water gun fight or some stupid shit.
Oh my god, I know.
I don't know. Yeah, like, so I think it's, like, important to know, like, you know, the media can spin anything, right, that they want to. And so I think that's kind of the lesson. I mean, most people probably already know that, but it's really shown in this case. Like, just take one little thing, and all they have to do is remove the context or remove any, like, background information, and they can just, like, spin whatever story they want. And it worked. And also, like, the general public, I think, is pretty gullible just in general. Well, I think that most people aren't going to do the additional research, right? Like, they're going to kind of just see what the media's given them. So I don't know.
Yeah, and also this is back in like 2007 or whatever. There's like Facebook that had just come out. They didn't have Twitter and all these things. So there wasn't really a place for anyone to kind of go against what the media is saying. Like, we'd said this before in other cases. So, I mean, whatever the media has, that's kind of what people have to take, because the family doesn't have an outlet to be like, no, this actually isn't true, unless they go to like the tabloids and media themselves, right? So they couldn't post anything on Twitter to say that everything's a lie, because that didn't exist back then. So it really was one-sided, and they couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah, that's actually a good point too, because like if her family goes to the media to like defend themselves, the media can choose whether to air that or not, right? Like if that's going to go against their story, they're not going to air that. Whereas if someone has their own Twitter account, they can like speak for themselves and they don't have to have that, they don't have to go to the media directly. So that's one thing. And so I guess it sucks that social media didn't exist, but also if social media had existed to the extent that it does now back then, like it would have been even worse for Amanda, I feel.
Yeah, like it wouldn't have just been the media that was against her. There could be actually like, people are a lot braver behind their screens, right? So there be definitely a lot more people probably ganging up against her, but she probably would have had more of a following, I feel, too, for people that are with her. So
yeah, the media in a way they're supposed to act as like the gatekeeper, like, right, they can report on what's like true and what's real. And whereas now on social media, it's like anyone can get on social media and say anything, right? So that's obviously the downside of social media, like anyone can say anything and there's no way to like corroborate that. It's just some random person on a Twitter. Whereas like before it was like the media was seen as like, no, they're the gatekeepers. They're going to decide what's true, what's not. They're going to fact check. They're going to do the research. So what they're giving you should be the fact, right? Or at least that's what the general public at that time believed, or like that's what most people believe, right? Obviously, we know there's biases with every media source. You kind of have to like do critical thinking and think about the message or like the perspective of that person writing it. But I think, so I don't know, social media has its goods and bads, but I feel like in this case, it would have been like probably way worse because who knows what random troll is going to make a fake Twitter account and say like, oh yeah, I was Amanda's boyfriend when she was in college and like she told me this, or she told me she wanted to kill someone or something, you know what I mean? Like stupid things. And there's no real like fact checking that would be happening, right? So
that's true. But at least there would have been an outlet for people to actually put the truth out there. Like her family, could have set up an account and put factual things out there rather than just being all this random bullshit.
Yeah.
Like I said before, like it was all one-sided. So super, just unfortunate.
Yeah. So I think it's just annoying how in line with the police that the media was at the time to like paint this very negative image of Amanda. And I think all these factors came together and it just like was really bad for Amanda in general. And like one blatant attempt by the media and the lead investigators to mislead the public about Amanda's guilt. So this is something that she actually mentions in the Megyn Kelly podcast interview that Amanda Knox has with Megyn Kelly. So it's actually really interesting as well. Something that we didn't talk about yet, but it kind of highlights the blatant misleading that the police knew that they were doing while they were doing it. So during the police's forensic investigation of the home, so this would have been very early on, probably the day of the body was discovered, like November 2nd or 3rd. So they go in there, and one of the processes they do is they use this chemical substance that's typically used to find blood or fingerprints on a surface. But the substance that they used was red. So during the process of looking for all this evidence in or on the sink, I remember Amanda said that she went into the bathroom the morning she went to the house on November 2nd and saw that there were a few speckles of blood in the sink, but like nothing alarming. So that's why she wasn't alarmed. It was just a couple of drops. So they go into this bathroom. They use this substance to find whatever evidence they can find. But the substance itself is red. So during the process of looking for this evidence, the entire sink becomes just covered in this red substance that looks like blood. So the police end up taking a photograph of the sink with that red substance all over it. And they release that image to the media without any context. And they say that this is what the sink looked like the morning that Amanda went into the home. So they try to say that it's absurd that she wouldn't think something was wrong because look at this sink. It's covered with blood. It's like a massacre. Like, how could you not think? So, but they knew what the red substance was. They knew it was like from their own testing, but they took that image purposely and used it to mislead the media and the general public. So they knew very well, and they were just trying to frame her, and that's just a blatant example of it. And that's just one example. And of course, we've, kind of talked about the police misconduct in general. But to me, that kind of just is all you need to know. Like just that one example kind of says it all. And what's this term? Like picture says 1,000 words. It's like that picture right there. It's like case closed.
I know. I remember when I was like doing the research, whenever coming across that picture, I'm like, holy fuck, look at that sink. And then you like, yeah, you read some of the stuff that they say about it. It's like, oh, that's actually not what it looked like. And so, yeah, if that they just released that and you didn't have that context, because I was almost like, oh my God, even though I knew the case, and then I saw that and I was like, holy. So I can definitely see why people were like, that's not a good look at all.
Yeah, because like you have people who are going to see her story of like, oh, it's just a few speckles of blood, no big deal. And then they're going to like side by side with that picture. And then you'll be like, well, no, she's lying, obviously.
Yeah, and that red stuff was all over the floor too, and like along the side of the shower, I think in some of the pictures. So it wasn't just a sink. It looked like there was like blood everywhere in that bathroom when it was really just that red substance.
Yeah, and also like, wouldn't you just in general, why would you not, can you dye that substance? Like, why do you have to have it red? I feel like you're looking for blood. I mean, blood's also red. So maybe have it be a different color so you don't somehow, I mean, I guess if you're an expert, you would know the difference, but I mean, who fucking knows? I mean, there's a lot of people who are doing wrong things in this case, but like, does it have to be red, that substance or chemical you're using? Like, come on.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's red, because usually when you see stuff like that, it's that blue substance, luminol, or I think, or what it is. I've never seen the red stuff before, so that's weird.
Like, I don't understand, like, why police have to do stuff like that. Like, it doesn't gain anything. Like, especially in this case where they were wrong. It wasn't her. And they'll never admit it, but...
Yeah, I think it's because, like, they didn't want to be embarrassed because they had this whole big thing about Amanda. And if they had to backtrack and be like, oh, that was our bad, we're actually wrong, it just would have been too embarrassing for them. But I mean, like, that's part of the job, is to admit mistakes, I would think, right? Part of any job. So, yeah, it's crazy that they let it go that far, just for their own pride, it seems like.
Yeah, it's almost more work to, like, try to, like, create this fake theory or this fake narrative. It's like, because I think I said it before, it's like, once they caught Rudy Gaudet and they arrested him, if they hadn't have sort of planted those seeds of it being Amanda, then they could have just said case closed. And that was like in December, like a month after it. And they would have been like, okay, we found the person, that's it. But because they had already started to plant the seeds of Amanda and Raffaele being involved, it's like they had to bring them into the theory somehow. So it's like, it's a more work for them in the end. They could have just stuck with the facts and it would have been all over sooner for everyone.
Well, yeah, and imagine just how much money was spent on this whole thing, like the retrial and the appeals, and then the exoneration and the retrials. Like, if they would have just dropped it at the beginning, then it would have just been one trial, and then Rudy's appeals, and then, like, done. And instead they spent, like, triple, quadruple the amount of money on this, so it seems crazy that they would let it get that far.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild.
So, while all this crazy media storm was happening in Italy, Amanda's family in the U.S. is actually supporting her, and they're starting to have a media campaign of their own for her. And they just wanted to reveal to the public how she was being treated by authorities in Italy. So I guess they were trying to gain like a support system for her in the US. And they wanted everyone to know that she had been interrogated unlawfully for hours and in a language that she was not fluent in. So, I mean, by the end of this whole thing, Amanda was fluent in Italian, but at the beginning, she really didn't understand everything. She understood very little. Also, they wanted everyone to know how they had used physical force to coerce her into admitting to things that were untrue. There was an article in the BBC that reports that Amanda says her interpreter kept asking her to imagine hypothetical situations. And in that article, Amanda is quoted to have said she, quote, was subjected to extreme psychological pressure and forced to speak at a point where she was incapable of showing discernment or willpower. So, yeah, her family was really behind her trying to really reveal the truth. Just kind of the craziness that was happening in Italy, because they really didn't have any other outlet to show people what was happening to Amanda. So
yeah, so and that kind of goes to what we said, like if only they had social media back then where they can kind of defend themselves without having to go to the media directly. So I mean, they were still able to, or trying to do that in every way they could, but it would have been much easier if they could just have a Twitter account. I guess they still had Facebook at that time, but yeah. So kind of, fast forwarding a bit after all of the ups and downs in this trial and all of the exonerations and then the retrial and all of that sort of stuff, kind of like a where are they now? So Rudy Gaudet, he ended up serving 13 years of his 16-year sentence, and he was actually fully released from prison in November of 2021. Which was around 14 years after Meredith's murder. So to this day, he insists that Amanda was there at the time Meredith was murdered, and that he is, not innocent, but that he was only a part of it. He wasn't fully guilty because Amanda played a role. So while fully released in 2021, he was actually given partial release in 2017, and he spent time volunteering in a soup kitchen and working during the days.
But apparently just 2 years after he was released, he was charged with domestic assault after a conflict with his ex-girlfriend. So I guess he really hasn't changed that much, kind of going back to his old violent ways. So be careful of him out there.
Yeah, it's crazy. And like, yeah, I just feel like the fact that he got 13 years or 16 years and was let out after 13 was just wild anyway, given like what we know about the brutal nature of this case and of the murder. Like, to me, it's wild that he was even, like, it's crazy that he's out already. And then he goes and, goes back to his old habits again, clearly. So that's sad.
It is crazy that he only got 16 years. I don't understand. Like, Amanda and Raffaele got 25 and he only got 16. It seems crazy. I mean, he was the only one that actually did anything.
Yeah.
So he lucked out.
Yeah, like the corrupt system, it's like the people who actually were innocent get more time than the person who did it. To me, it's crazy that once they exonerate Amanda and Raffaele, that like they would not go back to Rudy's sentence and be like, well, maybe you can get more time because you were solely involved. Like, we've acknowledged that Amanda and Raffaele were not involved. So maybe we should revisit what your actual sentence was. Because considering at that time, it was like, oh, well, he was just a part of it. But now it's like, no, we know he was the whole thing.
Yeah. I don't think he can go back and do that, though. Like, give him a longer sentence because things have changed with other people.
Yeah, probably not. But I mean, they don't really seem to care about the actual legality of things until, like, when it benefits them, they don't care. But when it doesn't, they do. I don't know.
It's crazy that, like, Rudy was just kind of like an afterthought, and it's like, oh, we got him, but, we're not going to stop there. And I feel like if they would have been happy with just Amanda and Raffaele, I feel, and like Rudy was just kind of brought in there as a, yeah, well, he was there too, let's do something with him. But I mean, it was really just about Amanda and Raffaele.
Yeah. And it's crazy too that like he got out after 13 years, so 3 years early, probably on good behavior, and then he goes out and allegedly is charged again for another domestic assault. So like, should he have gotten off on good behavior? Like, has he really been reformed? I don't know. So after Rudy's release from prison in 2021, so Amanda has said that she would be willing to forgive him for killing Meredith and damaging her reputation alongside it if he would fully own up to his actions and take full responsibility for Meredith's rape and murder and show remorse for what he had done. But instead, he's not done that. He continues to insist that Amanda was involved and was a witness to the whole thing. Just days after being released from prison, Rudy was quoted by The Sun, or The Sun originally reported it, but then The Independent reported what The Sun had reported. So that's how I feel comfortable with saying this, because The Sun isn't the most legitimate source, I feel. So the fact that The Independent also had it, I will say it. But he was quoted as saying, quote, "I've got blood on my hands because I tried to save her, not kill her," end quote. And he was also quoted as saying, quote, "The first thing I want to say is to the Kercher family and how sorry I am for their loss. I have written a letter to them in which I explain to them how sorry I am, but it's too late to say sorry for not doing enough to save Meredith," end quote. And he claims that the court has confirmed that he tried to save Meredith by putting towels on her wounds in an attempt to stop the bleeding, and says that, quote, "My DNA was there, but the legal documents say others were there and that I did not inflict the fatal wounds," end quote. And he also says, quote, "As I told you, they say others were there and I did not inflict the stab wounds. I know the truth and she knows the truth," end quote. Meaning Amanda knows the truth. So he's pretty much doubling down on all of it. I guess, why wouldn't he? That's the story and he's going to stick to it. But it's just wild that he's like still kind of saying that. And he's like, the legal documents say there were others there, but the legal documents don't say it was Amanda and Raffaele. Like, they were exonerated of that. So I don't really know what he's getting at.
Yeah, I think the main conclusion is that it was just him and there was nobody else there.
Yeah, so I guess he's just, like I said, that's his story and he's sticking to it. I don't know. It's just sad because, like, he got out, he committed this other allegedly, I don't know if it's so, is it alleged? I mean, he was charged with it, right? So I don't know, but domestic assault again. So he's like familiar habits. And that's like someone who obviously wouldn't be in that situation if he had been kept in jail or given a longer sentence, knowing what we know. But Yeah, it's just crazy. So, and it's also crazy to me that like Amanda even had like the ability to say that she would forgive him, like if he would fully take ownership. Like I don't even know if I could do that, considering the amount of A, what he did just in general, but B, like the fact that he allowed her to kind of go down with him in a way. So the fact that she was even open to forgiving him was wild to me too.
It kind of just goes to show what kind of a person Amanda really is. People see her as this like vindictive, sexual, deviant person, but in real life, to most people, that she's just like this like innocent, sweet girl that she was just painted in this bad way that she can never get rid of.
Yeah, and like only one. I mean, and you know the amount of negative press she got. It's like, but there's only one person who re-offended, or not even re-offended because Amanda didn't offend in the beginning. But there's one person who re-offended when they got out of prison. And Amanda's been out of prison and exonerated and hasn't reoffended. So that kind of shows you too.
So Amanda Knox, as we know, was so wrapped up in all this and got the shitty end of the stick and just wants to move on with her life. So as far as I know, as I was doing my research, Amanda Knox is now married and has 2 children. And she is living in Seattle where she grew up. So according to In Touch magazine, Amanda Knox is working with the nonprofit organization, the Innocence Project, and she was also the keynote speaker at the conference about criminal justice, which was hosted by the Innocent Project in Italy in June of 2019. And Amanda Knox is also a journalist and writer, and she also has her own podcast called Labyrinths with Amanda Knox. Sounds like a very interesting podcast. I personally haven't listened to it, but I plan to check it out.
Yeah, I'm going to add it to my listen list for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she does the podcast with her husband. Like, I think they're both co-hosts of it.
Oh, interesting.
I'm very interested in listening to it.
Cool. Yeah, I'm going to check it out as well. Amanda, she also wrote a book about her experience, which generated millions of dollars. Like, I think she got an advance of $4 million, I saw. And most of that went towards paying off all the lawyers that helped her in her defense and also paying off multiple mortgages that her parents had taken out to support her going through all this. So, you know, some are accusing her of cashing in on Meredith's death, but a lot of it is just kind of to pay for what her parents had to pay for while she was in prison. So it's not like she's living a lavish lifestyle because of this by any means.
So Raffaele is living in Milan, Italy, and he's actually a computer engineer. He's engaged to be married. There's honestly not a whole lot about his current life, but if you do search his name, it always comes up as Amanda Knox's ex. It always goes into their lives together during 2007, but there is no real update, like life profile of him. But I mean, like, I don't blame him for not wanting to keep up the media with his current life. I think he kind of just wants to get out of the public eye and just be more private, because where his life was so public when he was 23 and he was convicted of the murder, I think he just kind of wants to move on and have a normal life. Like, I think he just wants to be left alone and not be so public, which, I mean, I would too if I was him.
Yeah, it totally makes sense.
I don't want people knowing where I lived.
Yeah, I feel like I'd be the same. Yeah, and I've seen reports of like people say that Raffaele kind of gets lost a lot of times in this whole thing because everyone's so focused on Amanda and Meredith, and it's like they forget that Raffaele went through the whole thing that Amanda went through as well. Not his name so much being dragged through the media as much, but I mean, he was still imprisoned for 4 years and wrongfully convicted and had to go through the appeals, so people just kind of like set him aside, but yeah, he was in it too, that a lot of people forget. And yeah, and it's also reported that Amanda said she kind of fluctuates between wanting to be invisible, kind of probably like Raffaele, like just live a normal life, and wanting to clear her name. So I could definitely see where she has like a struggle of just like, leave me alone, I don't want anyone to know me, but then also, you know, getting justice for herself. And as we know, she is kind of going after that exoneration, so good for her, I guess.
Yeah. And I think the good thing is like it's on her terms now, right? Like now we live in a world where there's social media and there's podcasts, so she can like tell her story on her terms rather than having the media tell it for her. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's true. She can say what she wants and how she wants now. And also, in 2012, the city of Perugia and its university started up a scholarship fund in honor of Meredith Kercher. So that's like one little nugget of positivity throughout this whole thing. I think her parents or her father wrote a book called Meredith, and I think a lot of the proceeds from that are going into the scholarship fund. So it's for like a British student that is studying in Perugia. So that's, kind of a nice thing to put her Meredith's name on, since she was so passionate about school and she loved Perugia. So, yeah.
I really don't think she actually got complete justice for Meredith's death, because Rudy never only spent like 13 out of 16 years, which in my opinion, like we've said, like he should have got more. So I feel like there's not really this kind of justice, and there's not, because that person is now out of jail and still able to live somewhat of a life where Meredith will no longer be able to. So it's like, I don't really feel like there's a full justice for her.
Oh yeah, for sure. I feel the same. Like, there's no reason he should be out at all. He definitely didn't get as much time as he definitely deserved. I think he should have got life. It was like a brutal crime and intentional. So yeah, crazy.
Yeah. It's wild. So yeah, justice wasn't really served. I think one interesting thing too is I can't remember where I saw it, whether it was on Amanda's social media or another news report, but like she actually did go, I think, Steph, you mentioned she was the keynote speaker at a conference in Italy. So she did go back to Italy, and she actually met up with Raffaele. So she and Raffaele kind of like met up. They met each other's kids, or he met her kids and their new partners and stuff. So it's like kind of good that they could kind of see each other in like new light after all this had happened. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, so it is kind of nice that they kind of got to hang out and just kind of be normal, since they didn't really have that.
Yeah, it's kind of nice that they were able to put it behind them kind of and move on a little bit and still have a friendship. So that's nice.
Yeah. And because I kind of stumbled on that when I was thinking, like, I wonder if they still talk. Like, I was just curious about, like, I wonder if they have any type of relationship now. Because this is always going to, like, tie them together, right? Like, they're always going to have that bond that they both went through this crazy thing together. I was just interested to see if they're still, like, in communication. So it was nice to see that they were able to see each other after all these years.
I was also thinking, like, this is just me thinking out loud when I was researching this case, like, if he had never met Amanda or never hung out with Amanda, like, he would never have been in the media. He would never, like, we wouldn't even know who Raffaele was. Do you know what I mean? Like, if he never pursued that relationship. I always wondered, like, I don't think he regrets dating her, but I wonder if he always thinks that maybe if I just didn't pursue the relationship or know Amanda Knox, how different my life would have been.
Yeah, like, it's crazy that one chance sort of meeting at that concert.
Yeah, if I didn't have this one, it was only going out for like a week. If I didn't have this 1 week relationship or just would have done one thing different, I wouldn't be here. But I mean, I'm sure he doesn't hold that against Amanda. There's nothing that wasn't her fault.
Yeah, and I think Amanda, I think was screwed from the minute she moved in with Meredith, because like it was going to happen. She was going to be framed for it. But yeah, for Raffaele, like, it's just he happened to meet her at the concert and they dated for a week, that he kind of got thrown into it. So I guess, yeah. And so it's just crazy. Like, Rudy not only changed the course of, obviously, like, his own life and he killed Meredith, but he also changed the course of Amanda and Raffaele's lives forever. So that was just wild too. So crazy.
And the fact that he's still holding on to the fact that she was there, that Amanda was there at the time, and that that she had some sort of helping hand into the death. Like, the fact that he's still holding on to that, like, just let it go. Like, she didn't do it. There's no proof that she did it. Like,
I know. Why not just come clean and just, like, he was already convicted and went to jail for it. Like, why not just be like, yeah, she wasn't there? I don't understand that.
But couldn't he be, like, retried?
I don't think so.
Apparently you can. Double jeopardy's not a thing. If he were to come clean, like, maybe he'd be charged again.
Yeah, new evidence, new statement, new trial.
I mean, they were able to charge Amanda, like, multiple times.
Yeah, maybe that is why he's sticking to the story. I'm not saying nothing new about it, probably.
Yeah.
I don't blame him.
I don't know.
I mean, I do blame him, but I mean, I understand.
Yeah. I mean, I would do the same thing in his position. Like, you're going to stick to your story that you always have. But, like, so I guess Rudy is the only one in this who really holds anything against Amanda, except for, I mentioned in the previous episode, like, her old coworker, Patrick Lumumba, who still blames Amanda for kind of throwing him into that with all the slander charge. And I think she's still in court fighting that. And her and Patrick are still, I think, having, like, a legal battle over, like, the slander and stuff like that. So I don't think...
But she had nothing to do with the slander because it wasn't technically her. It was the police coercing her into saying who helped her.
Yeah. But I guess Patrick doesn't see it that way. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm surprised he even has a case, though, right? Because, yeah, like you said, it was the police really coerced her to say it, so it's their fault, not hers. But
yeah, so it's just crazy. I hope, I don't know how that's going to turn out. But yeah, like, lots of victims in this case, not only... Amanda and Raffaele, but of course Meredith, who was probably the ultimate victim in all of this, considering the brutality of her murder. So that kind of brings us to the end of our discussion on the Meredith Kercher murder case and the craziness with Amanda Knox and all of that stuff. So I think we're just about done. We've covered sort of all of the main topics. So thank you so much for sticking with us for the 4-episode deep dive. We hope you enjoyed it and hope you maybe learned something new or liked to kind of revisit this case. And yeah, thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week with the first part of a new case deep dive, and it'll actually be our final one of the season. So we're excited for that. So until then, you can follow us on all the social medias, Crime Family Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and at Crime Family Pod 1 on X. And you can get merch for the show. The link to that is in the show notes. You can also become a patron. If you join our Patreon as a paid member, you can get bonus episodes and early access and ad-free content. So the link to that will be in the show notes as well. Also send us an email, crimefamilypodcast@gmail.com. We love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Also, give us a review, give us a rating on the podcast app that you prefer, because we love to get that feedback. It really helps the show when you give us a good rating and all the review and all of that good stuff. So thank you so much. Also, we're on YouTube, so you can subscribe to us on Crime Family Podcast and listen to all of our episodes on there and comment. And
also, we only want 5-star reviews. Anything lower, you can keep to yourself.
I know we welcome all reviews, but preferably nice ones. But if it's a constructive feedback, maybe. But yeah, if you're going to be constructive in your feedback, maybe. But if you're just going to hurl insults, then maybe not. So.
Just hurl insults. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, no one needs that kind of negativity.
Maybe we shouldn't be so angry. Maybe take a page of Amanda Knox's book and, let things go and forgive. But no. But yes, leave us a review, and even if it's a bad review, whatever, just tell us your thoughts, because maybe there's something to be taken we can improve on. So, so thank you so much. We'll be back next week with a new case. And until then, take care.